Back at the Hi Wim and Alberto. I am Brian. I was born in Lima, the Peruvian capital down here in South America. And even though it's a damp autumn, it looks remarkably bright today. Anyway, that's good news. I have been a subscriber of your channel for just short of 2-3 months probably, ever since this whole quarantine thing started. I think it's a really important and often overlooked aspect of music performance, that what you're doing with the whole tempo thing, and I would like to reflect on it in a very specific and personal way. So I did take formal musical training for many years in the past, not anymore. And I remember that, well, of course I've got hundreds of stories of that kind, but I remember that from a very young age I would try to practice, try to play something, and when you take music, this was my reasoning back then, when you take music at a slower pace, sometimes ever so slower, of course this is within the concept of whole beat measurement, whole beat tempo indications, metronome markings, something I had no idea of. But when I took music slightly slower than the average or the common practice, I could discover or bring up close so much more of the music. And what I do remember is that being able, or being in the position where you have to bring up all these things that are previously unheard, not just notes, maybe some layers in music, layers in the performing. It was a much greater task than just playing at speed. And I think that the most relevant example of this is something that I did a million years ago when I was a lot younger. I had the opportunity to be in this masterclass with this pianist, a European pianist. And I didn't really have a piano teacher back then. I was already in the conservatory. I was studying musicology, I remember, that was my major. And I would play every so often. I've been playing for a million years now. Million years. Sorry about that. Short of 25 years I've been playing. And I chose this prelude and fugue in G minor from the, what's the proper name? Das Volltemperierte Klavier, the first book, the one in G minor. And I remember that I back then I had this fascination for Mr. Glenn Gould, whose playing is mesmerizing. You know? But unlike Mr. Gould, I would play the fugue at such a slow pace, you know, such slow pace that it became haunting. And I remember I so much enjoyed that power of hypnotizing with the sounds. But the thing is that I didn't know what I was doing, and of course that was an experiment, and I was very young back then. And when the teacher asked me why I had chosen that speed, so slow, of course, you get the point. When he asked why I took it so slowly, I I just shrugged. I didn't know what to say because I was a masterless pupil, a classical music enthusiast at most back then, and this was supposed to be a renowned master who had made so much sense throughout the class, of course, and he mentioned that I should know what speed I want before starting. I should know what I want the music to sound like just before starting. Something I kind of knew but didn't really made sense back then. And since I did not have any sort of backing for what I felt was right, because that's all we have, it's this sensation, this is all of sensations and perceptions, I just shrugged and said, well, I don't know, and when he asked what I thought the ideal speed would be, the only thing I could do was point at my only reference back then. It was Gould's rendition, which is 3 or 4 times as fast. And that's when I was, let's say, labeled not ready for the class, right? Which was a huge blow, but on the other side, a few of my friends who listened to my performance, they did point out that the fugue was something to behold. It was very powerful. And that same feeling I got as a listener, not as a performer, several years in the future, when I found your very own rendition of the Schubert Fantasia in I think it's B minor, I think it is, which is a piece that I had heard of, but I had never really listened to. And my first impression of this well-known piece was that of your historical tempo reconstruction, and I was just blown away. It was wonderfully deep and moving, and all the things in one thing. It's weird not to have words to describe such important things. And then of course I compared that with many other recordings, and I found out that speed, or tempo is the proper word, I don't want to say this or accept it, but tempo is just as timbre, bloody hell, what's the word? Referential. No, that's not the proper word. It's like a personal thing. It could be a matter of opinion. Science-wise, history-wise, there are certain rules. The research you've conducted is outstanding, and that is the main reason why I continue to come back to your videos, because they are always interesting. They are always enlightening. They are always teaching something, which is the main point of music, is to take a message out there. So for me as a performer, for me as a former music student, to me as a professional musician as well, to me as a teacher, to me as a listener, I would have to come to terms with something that you also mentioned in one of your videos, and that is the athletes 100 years ago are just regular people now, right? Now modern athletes taken into the past 100 and 200 years would be rendered superhuman, right? And probably alien, because everything has developed into something greater. I don't want to say better, it's just greater. And we can see that with the whole movement. The speed, the tempo performances are always increasingly faster, continuously faster. The piano competitions, they always boil down to who plays the fastest, who plays the loudest, and who plays the loudest. And my teacher, my late teacher, would agree with the fact. He would always say, it's not about who plays the fastest, it's about who plays the music, who plays the best. And speed is just one of the things that is to be accounted for in musicianship and musicality, if that's a proper word. So this whole beat, metronome, tempo thing, I apologize if I don't have the wording correctly, it's not really new to me. I have always been pretty faithful to my own playing, pretty faithful to my own renditions, and I do conduct some research before performing something. I have no data of this right now, but last year I made a recital, and I chose the Diabelli variations, which, as I remember, everybody mentions they are about an hour, 50 something minutes, 48, 50, 55 minutes long. And my approach to this music, which is the same approach I have applied to the Mozart of your challenge. Great idea, by the way. But my approach to this was that Beethoven, at that point in his life, did not have to impress anybody. So he could just do whatever he wanted. And if you take the variations at a much slower pace than what we know on every recording, you can just discover so many weird chords that are very logical to be used in his work. And the expressive qualities of all these transformations, I think the proper word is Veränderungen, however you pronounce it. I apologize in advance for insulting your culture. English is not my first language, and German is very far away from me, so I'm just going to try and not to do something silly. But anyway, getting back to the point, my performance was about 85 minutes long, and I did it was about 80 minutes, I remember now, and I did avoid a few repetitions every now and then because of the length of the recital, but it was a whole thing. It was a whole piece of work, just huge monumental piece of work that, again, in my opinion, and this is something that I think you know this much better than I do, this matters will continue to remain in the realm of opinion or educated opinions, because the times have changed. And your argument on I'm sorry if this is way too long, but your argument, your point on people who play period instruments and they continue with period performance practices, why don't they adopt performance tempo, historical tempo as well? And I think all the work you have been doing in your channel, you and Alberto as well, and I think I found another Liszt performer in your channel, I forgot his name though, will be a unmatched and unchallenged source of information of this so important subject that is performance and tempo and history. So I wish I had known about this a lot earlier, but I'm afraid it was not the case. But I wish I could have known about you and your work a lot earlier, so I could at least share this with my teacher. My teacher was adamant of music expression and all that. Well, he passed away a couple of years back though. But the point remains, it's the idea of taking, and this is of course music-wise, not really tempo-wise or metronome-wise, because the metronome is just a ticking machine. In the end, it just boils down to that. But having a unit which is an abstract, maybe not abstract, it's an arbitrary unit, an arbitrary length of time, just a ticking. Right? Having that in your mind and just sticking it up there allows you to free yourself from the subdivisions of the measure, if I'm speaking correctly. What I found was that not taking the differences in mind, whole beat performance is just as playing a 4/4 time music in 2/2 time. I don't know if that's the way to pronounce it in English. The feeling of the pacing is completely different. It feels lighter, even though it might. It's a counterintuitive thing. Taking things slowlier would allegedly make it seem heavier, but it's the contrary. So it was very interesting for me to do this consciously, knowing that what I am doing is a practice of time that I didn't know I used to do. It's a long time in the past. I would just do it on its own, by itself. I would just play and that's it. So the most important, I think the most interesting point in this, just to wrap this thing up, I think it's taking too long. The most interesting aspect of playing like this is that you are allowed, or you feel allowed to take your time in saying something, maybe differently or more profoundly and more interestingly or more carefully or with more expression, because you have more time to develop an idea. A faster scale will always be a faster scale regardless of the speed that you play. Fast is fast, and it has to feel fast. That's why the word allegro is for. It just means fast, and that's a so wide idea what fast is, what slow is. So in my practice, in my playing, you may have noticed I'm using a digital piano because my lovely grand is where I work, and right now we're in quarantine, so I'm not allowed to go there. So I'm going to miss that. However, I am using an interesting tool. I've been using an interesting tool. You might be familiar with it. It's called Pianoteq. It's a virtual modeling machine. It allows you to translate the MIDI performance or the MIDI information from a digital keyboard and model sounds from that based on certain physical parameters. So I have been, even though it's a piece of plastic and metal, I have been playing on I think it's an 1780 something pianoforte by someone named Schmidt. And since we were taking the liberty of reconstructing tempo, and I am also just using an older instrument, I mean, not one of your marvelous clavichord or the pianoforte you have. This is just what it is. It's a virtual copy of an old pianoforte. I also went the extra mile as to, I don't know if you can see this here. I'm using these limits, because having a physical limit to the keyboard, it's a very different thing too. And I also decided to use a mean tone 1/6 comma temperament system, tuning system, which resembles what apparently Mozart used to do, and that would be just like the cherry on top of the pie, right? It should feel as authentic as possible. It should feel as adequate as possible, even though the greatest of the challenges is not to perform, not to play, not to find the notes, not to hold the tempo. I think the greatest of challenges is to actually try and produce an interesting performance, try to produce a memorable performance taking into account that even though we're using all these techniques and all these performance indications from the past, but we're doing that from the present. I think a more interesting approach would be, if we are in the past, we are playing music from the present, from the future. That's in, we are standing in the future of this music, and that brings a special kind of freshness to these works. So well, anyway, that was an interesting chat. I applaud your what's the word for this? Bloody hell. That's what I get for not speaking to anyone in a while. I applaud your idea of these challenges. I think they are a lot of fun. They are educational. They are very interesting exercises of self-control, and most of all, they allow these things, these pieces of knowledge to move, to spread into a wider audience. Because I think that if I had to wrap everything in just a few words, is we should do, or we should like, or I think we like music that we like because we just like it, right? That's a basic animal approach to it. It's yes or no, binary, I like, I don't like. But knowing these things allows everyone to broaden their approach to appreciation, so as to be able to say, to tell what they like and how they like it, right? So I myself, you may see in my channel, this videos are unlisted because my channel is mainly for my own music, and there's no real room yet for classical performances in my channel. Right? I perform classical in the city once or twice a year, but the music I like is whatever music, whatever style that is well done, right? If it's properly played, if it's beautifully crafted, there is no way to deny that that thing is good. To me, music is like food. You can get crap ingredients and make wonderful food, wonderful dishes. Or you can take the best ingredients and burn them. Which one are you going to choose, right? So I hope you enjoyed this, watching this weird experiment of myself playing a piece that, oddly enough, I have never learned before, because I've never played Mozart. I always play Beethoven and Bach. So yeah, that's about it. I'm going to wrap it up now. This was fun. Let's do this again. you.